Okay, I'll continue on with this now. So I pause so I can make a new video, and what I did is I already created all the events to fill the rest of the border, and then I just deleted them, and now all I gotta do is hit the undo to bring them all back, in case you're wondering why they show up here so fast. Okay, so we got the top border, create it. Okay, so on loop, when Y position equals the start position of grid Y, which would be all of these, it creates a border at the top. Remember, the hotspot is very important. Okay, for the next event, okay, when the X position equals the X start position, it's going to create the border. Okay, so when each one of these all equal the X start position, so it creates a border on the left side of the grid. Again, hotspot's important. Alright, and the next event, I'm not going to explain this. If you're actually to do the math on this, you'd understand why it makes sense. But what it's actually saying is, for any grid block that lays along the bottom, it's going to create a border at the bottom edge of the grid block. And for the right side, okay, math again, just do the math, you'll figure it out. It will create a block on any grid block that is on the right side here, and create the border on the right edge. Now for the corners, this is why I spread the ID in the grid value, because if you remember, this will be ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So all I have to do is, because there's only one block that will be on this corner right here. So this event is saying if the grid ID, the one that I spread, equals this, then create a border on the left right edge and at the top of this grid. And I'll show you the hotspots for this in a moment. Same thing for the top left corner. So if the grid ID equals pretty much the last value, spread value, which would be this one, it's going to create the border there. And the same thing for the other two corners. Okay, so it fills it all up. The only difference with creating the corners is I never want those to be an active object, so they're already set to a backdrop right here, and they get destroyed right away. That is why the total count is only 40. So you get 10 across the top, they're still active, 10 across the two sides, and 10 across the bottom, and they're all active. That's why this says 40. Okay, for the next event, what this is saying is because Fusion reads down the list, so once I get to the last one here, all I have to do is use that same condition and then add this. So if the active border of this equals yes, and I've set that up here in all of these. Okay, so if it equals yes, I'm going to set the direction of the border to its current direction plus 2, which is, say for example on the right hand side, if I wanted an active, it'll look like this. And for the top, if I wanted an active object, it'll look like that, so on and so forth. So, and the next one's saying if any of them equal no, just add a backdrop and destroy that object. which is what it's doing. See how this says no? And then to close up, to finish off this group, I just, when it gets to the bottom here, I just deactivate that group. And that's it, and it creates the borders. And right now they're all, this says 0, so there's no active objects in here right now. Now, how do you set this up so that you do want active objects? Well, you go into here, and if I want an active border across the top, all I have to do is type in yes. There, that'll give me an active border across the top. See, the total is 10 right now. If I wanted it also on the bottom, I just type in yes. Okay, so these are still active. If you saw the very first intro video that I did, you probably get the idea of why I'm doing this. That way I can create blocks that'll show up here, and then when this fills up, the blocks will move up. These have to be active, so those blocks can hide behind it, because you can't hide an active behind a backdrop unless you do it in layers, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so now the question is, will this border adjust to me making the grid bigger? Let's find out. Let's say I want a grid 20 by 10. Boom, see? It all works out perfect. Grid's still centered. Good. What if I wanted it by, I don't know, 13? Boom. See, everything's all still nice and organized. All I gotta do is change these values, or change these values, and that's it. Everything works out. Let's look at some of the other borders that I did. So let's go 13 and 13. Yeah, nice blue one. You can get funky with this too if you want. Get creative, make some cool backgrounds and stuff. There's another one. And the last one would look like this. Okay. And I don't want these. Put this back to no. Try it again. Yeah, that's what it'll look like. That's it. I know I didn't go through this very well, but like I said, if you have any questions, just ask. I'll tell you. And I'll also upload the MFA for this, so you can look through it if you want. And I also created something else. This is it here. This explains setting up the values, what they do and everything, and I'll include that in the upload. I'll just make a zip out of all this. Okay, that's it. And yeah, I think that's it for part 2. I'll move on to part 3, and I'll start creating the blocks I'm going to use for my game. So, I'll see you then.